Another year and another chance for the Toronto Maple Leafs to win a Stanley Cup. And I know, trust me, I know. Before they even sniff a Stanley Cup, before they even sniff Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, the first step in that journey is to get out of the first round. Something they've only done one time since 2017. That's the entire Austin Matthews era. They've only gotten out of the first round twice since 2004. That's 20 years. Going on 21 years. They've only gotten out of the first round twice. Not very good. Recent history in the playoffs for the Leafs has not been very good. But they have an opportunity this season to change that narrative. In my opinion, management has put together the best team in this Austin Matthews era that is more ready for the playoffs than any other team that I can remember since 2017. They got two good goaltenders. It's probably going to be a split in the playoffs. They've gotten bigger on defense. They've added some depth scoring, and they finally found a top winger on the left side to play with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, who can not only contribute with almost 30 goals. I mean, by the time we release this video, he might already have 30 goals. But he brings a different element to that line. He's physical. He scores. He gets in the paint. He wills his team to win games, as we saw recently against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they also added a Stanley Cup winning coach in Craig Berube, who's been there before with a team who needed to claw back into the playoffs. And that's with St. Louis in 2019. And they ended up going all the way. So all the pieces are there. Now it's up to them to prove it to us in the playoffs. But in the first round, they have 4 possible opponents. And that's the whole point of this video. I'm going to explain and break down each matchup and what I believe is either favorable to them or just an absolute nightmare. And you can imagine what teams actually fit into there. Maybe there is no favorable matchups based on the Leafs, because when the Leafs hit the ice, they're not just playing another team. They're playing themselves. It's what's going on between the ears when it comes to the core players on that team. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Morgan Riley. Like, those guys have been there for a long time, and they've gotten out of the first round one time. Experience, sure, but they got to prove it to themselves, and they got to prove it to the rest of us. So let's start with who I think is actually the best opponent for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it just so happens to be the team that they beat in the first round for the only time since 2017, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, this matchup feels highly unlikely because Tampa and Toronto are going to finish 1-2 in the Atlantic. I mean, at least they should. Anything can happen. I mean, Tampa and Toronto can go on a tailspin for the next 3 or 4 games, and Florida can win every single game, and next thing you know, everything's flipped upside down. Don't think that's going to happen. But if it does happen, it's favorable to the Leafs. And there's multiple reasons why. You have to take this regular season into account because the Leafs swept Tampa Bay 4-0. 5-2, 5-3, 5-3, 4-3. Sounds like a tennis score. Game, set, and match for the Leafs. They took care of business when they played Tampa Bay. And like I mentioned, they're the team that they beat in the first round, the only team that they beat in the first round. So they have that confidence. They know that if they play Tampa Bay, they've done it before. And that core has been there. And now, like I said, they've gotten better. That's got to count for a lot. Also, Vasilevsky feels like the Leafs have his number. And that's crazy to say considering how good Vasilevsky's been. He's been one of the best goalies of this generation. But the Leafs, they chased him back in October. And that's the 13th time, just the 13th time that Vasilevsky was pulled in his career. Look at the score lines they put on this guy so far. 3 starts against Toronto, 3 losses, 4 goals allowed in each game. That's got to count for something. I mean, for a team like Toronto who struggles notoriously in the playoffs to score goals, they can go up against a goalie who they know can be a boogeyman, but they should have confidence in that they can beat him. Now, on the flip side, this is still Tampa Bay. This is John Cooper. This is Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky. I know I just mentioned the Leafs have confidence against that goaltender, but on paper, look at the matchup. Vasilevsky against Stolarz/Joseph Woll. Who do you give the edge to? Vasilevsky, obviously, even though the Leafs have had success against him. This is a team that still has an incredible amount of championship pedigree. Not a pushover whatsoever, and it would be a difficult series. It would probably go 7 games. Now let's enter into the scary territory. The Ottawa Senators, who've clinched the playoff berth for the first time since 2017. Now, why is it scary? Well, I'll tell you. Look at the regular season. The Sens swept the Leafs. 3-0. 3-0, 2-1, 4-2. Those were the score lines. And I know the Leafs were banged up in some of those games, but Ottawa outplayed them. I talked about how the Leafs would have confidence against Tampa Bay because they swept the Lightning in the regular season. Ottawa's going to feel the exact same way. And how about this for a record? 6-1-0. The Sens are against the Leafs in the past 2 seasons. You tell me they're not confident? You tell me they wouldn't want the Leafs over Florida, over Tampa Bay? Of course they would. Give them some truth serum, and they will all tell you the same thing. We don't want Tampa. We don't want Florida. Give us the Toronto Maple Leafs. You take the team that struggles to get out of the first round and has those demons over 2 teams that have won the Stanley Cup basically every time in the past 5 years. And another reason it's scary is because their captain is a hell of a player. Like, he's been out for the past few games, but it looks like they're just load managing him up until the playoffs, which is very smart. They've already clinched a spot. No need to bring him back right away. He's a leading goal scorer. He's never played in the playoffs. So, I mean, that's a big disadvantage in a way, but we saw what he could do at the Four Nations. When everything is on the line, he rose up to be one of the best players, not only for the States, but one of the best players in that tournament. He's one of the leading goal scorers with 3 goals. And it's also what else he adds. Incredible leadership. Willing to fight, willing to drag his team into the fight, willing to do whatever it takes to get his team over the line to win. Not a guy you want to see for 7 games in a playoff series. Let's just be real here. Brady Tkachuk is a game changer. Just like his brother, I think Brady Tkachuk is going to take to the playoffs like a duck to water. Unbelievable player. And the goaltending could be a problem for the Toronto Maple Leafs too. And I know Linus Ullmark hasn't been great in the playoffs. I believe he's got an .887 save percentage. He's only made 9 starts. Not a lot of experience, not a lot of success. But in the regular season here, he's put together stretches of games, 5, 6, 7 games, where he looks like one of the best goalies in the entire NHL. If he can do that for 1 series, Ottawa has every chance of beating any team that they face, because that's what goaltending can do for you. And a lot of these teams I'm going to mention here, obviously Tampa Bay and Ottawa, we're going to get into Florida and Montreal. Goaltending can take them a long way. And I think Linus Ullmark could potentially do that if he steps up in the playoffs. Now, why should the Leafs feel like they can win this series? Well, experience. It should count for a lot. This is this group's, at least the core, this is their 9th straight postseason. That counts for a lot. That's a lot of games. And I know they've only gotten over the first round hump 1 time, but they've been there. They've done that. Can't say the same for the Sens. First playoff berth since 2017. Not many players on that team have played in the postseason and played meaningful games that way. Outside of David Perron, who I believe won the Stanley Cup with Craig Berube in St. Louis. You know, Claude Giroux's been there with the Flyers. Linus Ullmark's been there with Boston. Yes, okay, they didn't win a championship. They didn't go deep, but he was in a dressing room filled with some serious champions. Krejci, Marchand, Patrice Bergeron. That's got to count for something. It really does. But the Leafs have a ton of experience, and on paper, that trumps any experience that the Ottawa Senators have. Also, Ottawa can't score at 5-on-5. They're 30th in the league at 5-on-5 scoring. That's concerning considering they're doing that in the regular season. In the playoffs, when the ice shrinks and the games get tighter and the refs put the whistle away, it's going to be even more difficult to score goals. It's going to be tough for Ottawa to find the back of the net. And the Leafs, listen, they're middle of the pack when it comes to 5-on-5 scoring, which is fine. But the power play is humming. 6th in the league. You know, the second half of the season, they've been one of the best power plays in the league. If they can take that success with the 5 forwards into the playoffs, special teams can determine series. And I think it can determine who wins this series if they play Ottawa in the first round. And there's history, right? You got to look at the historical stats as well. Leafs are 4-0 against the Sens in the playoffs all time. Now, I get it. Those teams do not, the players on these teams weren't playing in those series back in the day, the Battle of Ontario, when it was huge. That was it. That was the series. You want to see Sens Leafs. These players have no attachment to that other than the jerseys that they wear. But you got to take historical data into account. I had to present that to you at least. And how about home ice? Leafs are going to have home ice. Are they going to have home ice in both barns? In the regular season, that crowd in Ottawa is 50-50. 50% Leafs, 50% Sens. Now, are the Sens going to allow Leafs fans to come in and buy all those tickets? I don't think so. If I'm Ottawa and I'm management or someone high up in that organization, I buy up as many tickets as I possibly can and start throwing those things away to Sens fans. That's probably illegal, but you can't have the visiting team come into your barn and take over, because it'll be home ice in Toronto and Ottawa for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Sens cannot let that happen. Continuing in the scary territory It's the Montreal Canadiens, who are not that far off the Ottawa Senators. Why is it scary, you may ask? Do I have to bring up 2021? The last time the Leafs won a division and essentially had to play the 8th seed? Who was that? Oh, the Montreal Canadiens. What happened in that series? Oh, I don't know. The Leafs were heavily favored. They went up 3-1, and Montreal came back and won the series and went on this magical run to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's eerily similar to 2021. We're in 2025, and that feels like it was 20 years ago. But it's happened before. Why can't it happen again? Also, the Montreal Canadiens are a scary proposition in the playoffs because they have absolutely nothing to lose. And, you know, I usually don't like hearing that, and I hate saying that because obviously teams have something to lose. You get into the playoffs and you want to win. And if you lose, you lose. Like, it still hurts the same as it would any other team. But they weren't even supposed to be here. The first half of the year, they were not a very good team. We're talking about full meltdown rebuild mode for the Montreal Canadiens. But that's not happening. They're a really good team. Since December 1st, they've been the 10th best team in the NHL. You don't want to play that team. I'm sorry. And think about, I talked about experience with the Leafs. How about Montreal? When it comes to their two best players, guess where they've been? That Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and Willie Nylander have never been. The Stanley Cup Final. That's Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. So there is some experience on that team. I'm just saying, I would not want to play the Montreal Canadiens. I would not want to go to the Bell Center, especially if I'm the Leafs with the demons that I have in my back pocket. Those demons are always lurking. And those demons are really going to come out when you're matching up against the Montreal Canadiens on the back of 2021. Ooh, I'm scared from the Toronto Maple Leafs. One thing I should probably also mention is the goaltending. The Leafs don't have that big of an edge, at least when it comes to playoff experience. Montembeault has never played in the playoffs. I get it. Stolarz has never started a game in the playoffs. Joseph Woll has started 4 games. So there's your experience. It's next to none for both sides. And there's no reason why Sam Montembeault or maybe Jakub Dobiš comes in and steals a couple games in that series. That could happen. Can you not see the Bell Center with that energy and magic that they create get behind their goaltender who puts together a 40-save performance and Nick Suzuki scores in overtime to win a game? I could totally see that happening. All right, now why should the Leafs feel like they should win this series? Outside of the obvious, they have the experience. They are the better team. They have the better players. That you can't doubt that. And when it comes to the Habs, they're kind of leaking oil at the back end here. You know, out of every single playoff team at the moment, they've allowed the most goals. That's a problem. You know, when you're, a team that's just getting into the playoffs and you're allowing a ton of goals and you're going up against a really good offense, yes, I know, not proven in the playoffs, but it's still a really good offense, that could cause some issues. And home ice will be big for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this series as well. And I have to mention history, and this historical stat will make Leaf fans happy at least, because the last time they beat the Habs in the playoffs, 1967. What happened then? Oh, the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup. And now we come to the Florida Panthers, which is, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's Boston 2.0. It's Boston on steroids. And it's absolute nightmare fuel if you're a Leaf fan. The Panthers, to me, are the best playoff team in the NHL. Back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. They play the right way. They're the best playoff team in the NHL. If you were to pull every team that makes the playoffs this year and you ask them, name one team in the East or the West that you want to completely avoid, who is it? I bet you at least 90% of the teams say Florida. Who the hell wants to play these guys? They got everything. They got the goaltending, 2 Vezes and a Stanley Cup. Ekblad, okay, he was doping. He's going to come back for the 3rd game. Really good defense. He's a horse. Plays in every situation. 30 minutes a night if they need him to. Maybe even more. They just brought in Seth Jones, who looks pretty good on that power play. Nico Norris-Mikkola, another good defenseman. He's got a cup. Gustav Forsling. They picked him up off the scrap heap. He's a great defenseman. That's just the back end. Look what they have up top. Alex Barkov, Sasha Barkov, the best defensive forward, 2-way forward in the NHL, and it's not even close. Matthew Tkachuk is coming back after some load management. He's going to be roaring and ready to go. He's going to jump on that moving train. He's going to jump to the front of the train and start driving that thing. Matthew Tkachuk is a playoff performer. This is a guy who needed help from his brother, his teammates, and his dad to put on his gear to play playoff games. This is the mentality that they have in Florida, and they have the third most winningest coach in NHL history in Paul Maurice. I didn't even mention Sam Reinhart, who's played the most games out of any player over the last 3 seasons and was really good at the Four Nations. Sam Bennett, remember him? Yeah, he's coming back. He's getting load managed until the end of the season. And they brought in a guy named Brad Marchand, who the Leafs have never beaten in the playoffs. Whew! That's the boogeyman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, is number 63. There's a lot to like about this Panthers team, and there's a lot to be scared about if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. I didn't even mention Carter Verhaeghe. If you look at some playoff stats over the past, I think 3 or 4 seasons, Carter Verhaeghe has the most game-winning goals, more than anybody. Carter Verhaeghe. That's the Florida Panthers for you. Oh, and I should mention the Panthers beat the Leafs 3 out of 4 times this past season, and in the last game completely outplayed the Leafs. They didn't have Tkachuk, they didn't have Ekblad, and they didn't have Sam Bennett, and they still dominated the Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, so why could the Leafs beat the Florida Panthers? The only thing I could come up with is that too much hockey catches up with the Panthers, and the Leafs take care of it. That's the only way I see anything happening here, is that Florida's played too many games. Their players have been in 4 nations, back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. They won the President's Trophy a couple. I mean, I don't know. The Leafs have no edge in this series. They don't have an edge in goaltending. They don't have an edge in defense. They don't have an edge in experience. They don't have an edge in playoff experience. They don't have an edge in goal scoring. I mean, Barkov shuts down that top line every time he plays against them. So, now listen, maybe the Leafs get past the first round when they play, let's say, Tampa or Montreal or Ottawa, and they get Florida in the second round. Probably going to be the same thing. They would have to hope for too much hockey catching up and some injuries. That's the only way. All right, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know in the comments below, do you agree with my assessment here that Tampa is the best matchup for the Leafs, and Florida, you got to avoid them as much as you possibly can if you're Toronto? Let me know in the comments below. Rank them for me as well. Thanks so much for watching the video.